The orchard lay beyond the jagged cliffs that bordered the Ionian Sea, a place of legendary opulence rumoured to drip with golden fruit under the perpetual glow of an otherworldly sun. Few dared approach, for stories of Harpies, those winged, vengeful creatures of Greek lore, clung to the orchard like a stench. The tales claimed they circled overhead, screeching at intruders, punishing those who sought to glean even the smallest memory of its precious harvest. Some said the trees themselves whispered with malevolent intent, bending their branches like twisting claws to snare the curious. Others claimed the fruit shimmered so brightly that mortal eyes could never withstand its radiance. Yet still, the orchard persisted in the hearts of those whose greed or desperation overcame every cautionary tale. Merope was neither particularly greedy nor overtly desperate, but she was a restless wanderer, eager for stories that transcended mortal boundaries. She had listened with rapt attention to an old fisherman's warning. The orchard was cursed by the wrath of Hera herself, who once placed these golden fruits to tempt humankind, or perhaps to punish them. But the fisherman's details were hazy, passed down through too many tongues and too many years. What remained in Merope's mind was a curiosity she could not quell. So she set off, leaving behind the sea-swept village that had sheltered her for a few short weeks, determined to discover the truth behind the orchard's dark aura. Her journey started in the grey murk of dawn. She wrapped her travelling cloak tightly around her shoulders, stepping with caution on the uneven ground that led to the cliffs. Each rock jutted like a hidden fang, offering no easy paths. But Merope pressed on, guided by the memory of the fisherman's trembling finger as he pointed westward. Occasionally, the mournful cry of gulls drifted across the sky, but otherwise an eerie hush enveloped her. It was as though the land itself feared disturbing the orchard. She set up camp at the base of a towering escarpment, where a narrow path spiraled upward. Hidden among a cluster of cypress trees, she lit a small fire and chewed on dried figs. Each bite filled her with fleeting warmth, though her mind remained tense with anticipation. If the orchard proved to be as perilous as claimed, she would need more than dried fruit and a single blade for protection. Still, luck guided her. A travelling huntsman crossed her path shortly after she settled. He warned her of monstrous birds in the vicinity and offered a battered round shield in exchange for her meagre supply of salt. Grateful for the chance measure of safety, Merope accepted, cradling the shield as she rested. Sleep hovered fitfully at the edges of her consciousness, but fear soon lulled her into an uneasy dream. In her dream, she stood before a grand marble gate. Beyond it stretched endless rows of trees, with leaves like gold-flecked jade. Luscious fruits hung heavily from the boughs, glowing in all the hues of an autumn sunset, rich ambers, burnished coppers, and the scintillating shine of polished gold. The air reeked of overripe sweetness. Then came the screech, sharp as thunder. She lifted her gaze, and she saw them. Harpies with large leathery wings, gaunt faces and talons that glistened like sharpened knives. Their eyes gleamed cold and hungry, their limbs taut with a feverish protectiveness. As they swooped down, the dream shattered into darkness. Morning found Merope jolted from sleep, the echo of those inhuman cries reverberating in her mind. The path beckoned, and with the shield strapped to her arm, she ascended the spiraling track carved into the cliff's face. The climb was grueling, hours spent picking her way along precarious ledges. The wind howled, threatening to tear her from the rock. More than once, she slipped on loose gravel, nearly plummeting into a yawning abyss. But at last, she reached the top. Spread before her in a jagged valley beyond the cliffs was the orchard. A wide, imposing gate, its iron bars furred with rust, vines creeping through the gaps blocked the entrance. Beyond the gate, the orchard's trees shimmered with a faint but entrancing glow. The wind carried a strange hum, a dissonant frequency that sent chills along Merope's spine. She could almost taste the sweetness in the air. She approached cautiously, brushing aside twisted vines that clung to the gate. A tarnished plaque was affixed to one of the columns. Time had eroded the lettering, leaving only fractured lines, yet she could make out a few words. Gift of Hera. For the unworthy only vengeance shall remain. Was it truly a punishment? Or had the orchard been placed here as some twisted form of generosity? She did not know, but felt a tug of both awe and dread. The gate, though rusted, groaned open under her push. Merope stepped inside, mindful of every sound. The orchard was eerily silent at first. The hum was everywhere, yet nowhere like the puff of breath in one's ear, too subtle to pinpoint. She moved along rows of vibrant trees, each trunk twisted into shapes reminiscent of contorted figures straining under an unseen burden. The ground underfoot was bare soil, but flakes of gold scattered here and there, as if wind-blown from the fruits overhead. At a closer glance, the golden fruit was mesmerizing. Their surfaces seemed to shift with the changing light. She reached out, curiosity aflame, but her fingers halted a hair's breadth away. Something, instinct or the memory of that fisherman's warning, made her draw back. She pressed on instead, determined to see if this orchard was as vast as it seemed. As she wandered, the orchard's symmetrical rows gave way to a clearing. A circular stone altar stood at its center, encircled by 6 tall columns. Each column was wrapped in vines that bore golden flowers in various stages of bloom. The top of the altar was marred with scratch marks and scorched places, as though it had endured countless rituals. She ran her fingers over the grooves of one scratch, trying to imagine the creature or man who had inflicted it. The pillars, small yet imposing, gave her the sense that she was in a forbidden temple. It was then she heard the first hiss, a heavy rasp of air as if something with a large wingspan had just landed behind her. Heart pounding, she turned. Harpies stood perched on the orchard's branches, peering down at her. Their plumage was the color of tarnished bronze, their faces stretched into a semblance of feminine cruelty. Talons curled around the bark. In a single motion they launched themselves into the clearing, circling overhead. Their screeches churned the air into a frenzied chaos. She fumbled for her shield. The battered disc of bronze felt pitiful in her trembling grip. One harpy dived, claws outstretched, but Merope raised the shield just in time. The impact jolted her arm. Another swooped from behind, raking across her sleeve, tearing fabric and drawing a thin line of blood on her shoulder. White-hot pain flared. She staggered back, forcing herself to swing the shield wildly. The harpies shrieked, twisting away in graceful arcs. They were testing her defenses in unison, each attempt more cunning than the last. Their savage beauty was horrifying. One had eyes that burned like coals, her hair matted in greasy tangles. Another had an elongated beak-like mouth, razor-sharp teeth slick with drool. Merope's mind raced. Could she outrun them? She doubted it. Their wingspan was broad, and they glided with an effortless speed, yet somehow they did not strike to kill outright. They circled, scratched, and menaced her, as though her presence was an affront that they would toy with before delivering a final blow. Desperate, Merope lurched toward the ancient altar, seeking any advantage. One of the harpies slammed into her from the side, sending her sprawling onto the stone surface. She landed hard, breath knocked out. The harpy descended, talons scraping at her shield. Merope pressed the rim of the shield upward, adrenaline surging. She managed to wrench the shield sideways, knocking the harpy off balance. With no time to consider tactics, she rolled off the altar and scrambled to her feet. The moment she stood, another screech pierced the orchard, but this time it was different, full of alarm. From high above, a third harpy, larger than the rest, soared into view. This one's feathers had a faint streak of gold, and there was a cruel intelligence in her eyes. Landing near the altar, she monumentalized her presence with a whip-like motion of her tail feathers. The others drew back, cawing in some savage language. Merope stood still, heart hammering. She gripped her shield with sweaty hands, uncertain of what this new arrival intended. For a long moment, the orchard seemed to pause, as if caught in a tension of anticipation. Then the golden-feathered harpy spoke, a harsh, rasping voice that blended human speech with the underlying hiss of a serpent. "You dare to trespass," she spat, her lip curled in disgust. "Do you seek the golden fruit, or do you come in ignorance?" Merope swallowed, trying to steady her voice. "I came out of curiosity, nothing more. I heard tales of this place, of the orchard, the fruit, and the guardians. I wanted to see for myself," as the harpy let out a derisive caw. "Mortals always want to see, never content with what is. Our orchard is bound by Hera's curse. Every mortal step that dares to tread here only feeds its hunger. If you value your life, you will flee." While Merope heard the threat, she also felt a pull, like the orchard was calling her, inviting her deeper into its secrets. She chose her words carefully. "Tell me of the curse. Is there no way to undo it? I see only fruit that no one dares to eat." The harpy advanced, wings stirring the air in restless agitation. "Eat?" she repeated, spitting out the word as though it were foul. "Countless men and women have devoured these fruits, and none have survived untainted. Their greed swelled, their hearts twisted. The orchard's magic feasts on that corruption, and we harpies enforce Hera's punishment. We are the keepers of this cursed realm, watchers of mortal folly." Merope let out a shaky breath. So the stories were true? The orchard was cursed by a divine will? And the harpies? They were not mindless fiends, but enforcers of that will. She bowed her head slightly, hoping to convey respect. "I mean no harm. I seek knowledge." A scornful laugh erupted from the harpy's throat. "Knowledge? So many come claiming virtuous aims? In truth, they all succumb to the fruit's temptation," she said, gesturing with a wing toward the golden orbs dangling from the nearest branches. "It is not only the fruit that corrupts. The orchard thrives on mortal desire, weakening their minds. One taste leads to madness. One flicker of longing leads to obsession. It is a slow transformation of the soul into monstrous shadow, until nothing remains but a thirst for more fruit, more wealth, more power. And we must ensure that thirst is contained here, never to spill into the world beyond." Merope glanced at the fruit again. Where moments ago she sensed merely a glow, she now felt an oppressive weight. Something about the orchard was indeed feeding on her curiosity, magnifying it into a near frenzy. Her mind conjured images of tasting the golden flesh, of letting the sweet nectar fill her. She shivered, fighting the sudden wave of longing. Forcing herself to focus, she faced the harpy again. "Is there no redemption?" The harpy's eyes flickered. "None that I have witnessed. Many claim they can break the curse, suitors of mortal cunning, heroes favored by lesser gods. But if Hera's wrath were so easily undone, she would not be called the Queen of Olympus. Still, if you insist on trying, I will allow you to pass deeper into the orchard. But heed this, the orchard's very air will corrode your will. If your resolve fails, the fruit will claim you." The rest of the harpies hissed in disagreement, but the golden-feathered leader raised a talon, silencing them. A cruel grin spread across her face. "Let us see if your curiosity holds a kernel of strength, mortal." With a sudden flap of her massive wings, she rose, the other harpies swirling in her wake, shadows against the orchard's glowing canopy. Their screeches echoed like mocking laughter. Left alone, Merope gripped her wounded shoulder. Blood seeped through her ripped sleeve, pain sharpening her mind. She realized she should leave. The orchard radiated danger, its mere scent like a lullaby to her reason, beckoning her to sample the fruit. Yet she took a shaky step forward, determined to test whether a spark of hope flickered in these cursed groves. She reassured herself that she was a traveler of strong will, that sheer curiosity could be cleansed of greed. She ventured deeper, weaving through the orchard's labyrinthine rows. The trees grew taller, denser, their golden leaves weaving a patterned canopy overhead. Strange shapes flickered at the edges of her vision, half-formed illusions of dancing figures, swirling clouds of luminous pollen. She heard whispers, a chorus of voices that merged seamlessly with the rustling leaves. They beckoned her by name, Merope, urging her onward. It was horrifying how intimate the orchard's pull had become in such a short time. At length, she came upon a solitary tree, larger than any she had seen so far. Its trunk was thick and black, its bark cracked like parched earth. The leaves were shaped like spears, each veined with molten gold. The fruit here surpassed all others in brilliance, shining as if forged from the purest metal. Beneath it, a dilapidated stone statue lay toppled. Once, it might have been a representation of Hera holding a scepter. The statue's face had been chiseled away, the scepter snapped in half. An unsettling hush fell. Merope felt the orchard's presence intensify, pressing upon her chest. Without realizing it, she lifted her hand, inching it toward the fruit within reach. She paused. A single droplet of sticky juice dripped from the fruit's skin, hitting the ground with an audible hiss, as though it was scalding. She envisioned tasting that luscious nectar, feeling it slide down her throat, filling her with warmth. Only the memory of the Harpies' warnings kept her from plucking it. Her mind warred with desire, a desire that felt not entirely her own. A sudden movement snared her attention. At the edge of her vision, a figure emerged from behind the broad trunk. He appeared mortal, a young man, slender, with skin pale as moonlight and hair wild around his features. His eyes, however, were vacant, as though he looked upon something unimaginably distant. He was holding 2 pieces of fruit, half-eaten, the golden pulp smeared over his lips. He moved with a languid sway, as if drawn to the orchard's heartbeat. A chill seized Merope. Here was living proof of the orchard's corruption. A man so enthralled by the fruit that he wandered aimlessly in silent ecstasy. She wondered how long he had roamed among these trees, sustained by the fruit's cursed nectar. Did he even remember who he was? She called out to him, but he only stared without comprehension, finishing the last mouthful of fruit. Then, slipping behind another tree trunk, he faded from view as if consumed by the orchard itself. The orchard hissed, or perhaps it was the wind moaning through the leaves. Merope felt the creep of dread. She could sense the orchard's enchantment pressing closer, whispering that one taste would reveal ultimate knowledge, or grant immortality, or fill her heart with joy beyond measure. Lies, all lies, she told herself, but the yearning threatened to unravel her resolve. She forced herself to step back from the shining fruit. Suddenly, the orchard parted like a stage curtain to reveal a clearing. In the center stood a solitary dais of polished stone. Above it hovered one massive golden fruit the size of a melon, suspended by no visible support. Its radiance was blinding, yet she couldn't look away. She sensed that this was the orchard's heart, the nexus of the curse. If the orchard's magic had a source, it might be contained here. Despite her trembling, Merope approached, drawn forward by a compulsion both fearsome and irresistible. With each step, her head pounded, her self-awareness flickered, overshadowed by the orchard's siren call. She began to envision a future triumphant, returning to the world with the secret of the orchard's power, praised by kings and revered by scholars. Her heart thundered with the possibility, but the memory of the enthralled man lurked in her thoughts. She shook her head, struggling to refocus. The orchard twisted illusions from her own hopes and fears. She refused to be consumed. Forcing her eyes to remain open and her hand steady on the shield strap, she neared the floating fruit. A swirl of golden dust enveloped the dais, forming patterns in the air. From above, the golden-feathered harpy descended, landing on a branch that jutted over the dais. Her voice resonated in a hush that carried through the clearing. "Now you stand at the threshold," she said, her tone tempered with a hint of grudging respect. "The orchard's heart calls. Will you yield to your curiosity?" Merope exhaled, her breath ragged, sweat beaded on her brow. "If consuming that fruit means binding myself to this curse, then no," she rasped. "But if there is a way to lift this curse, then what must be done?" The orchard claims it offers knowledge. Show me that it is not all deception." The harpy locked her gaze, an unreadable look flaring in her eyes. "You crave a miracle. But such wonders come with a price. Perhaps you cannot break the orchard's hold. Perhaps it is fated to remain a testament to Hera's scorn." The orchard's hum intensified, swirling around Merope in waves. She thought she heard faint chanting, as though the trees themselves were urging her to claim the fruit. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the tension coil tighter. Then, summoning what remained of her will, she focused on the battered shield at her side, on the memory of how she attained it from a huntsman with straightforward honesty. She remembered the fisherman's face, etched with both fear and kindness. She remembered her own convictions, shaped by a desire for wisdom that was not fueled by greed. These recollections grounded her, forming a bulwark against the orchard's seductive pull. Planting her feet firmly, she raised her eyes to the harpy. "I will not take the orchard's fruit," she declared. "I will not perpetuate this curse. But I cannot stand by while others wander in ignorance. If there is anything I can do, some ancient rite or offering, to quell the orchard's hunger, I beg you to guide me." Wings spread wide, the harpy dropped down onto the dais with startling grace. "Your determination is commendable," she said, "but these roots run deep into the realm of gods. Only a deity's pardon could unravel the curse entirely. We cannot grant you that, nor can we release our charge. Our fates are bound to the orchard as punisher and jailer." Her voice fell to a whisper. "Go, mortal, and share what you have learned with your kind. Warn them of the orchard's lure." Merope felt a pang of sorrow, not just for those trapped in the orchard's thrall, but for the harpies themselves, creatures cursed to guard a realm of torment for eternity. Their punishment was as unending as the orchard's. She realized they were not entirely malevolent, but shaped by a will older and more powerful than they could defy. Her mind raged at the seeming futility of it all, but the orchard was pressing harder now, its presence seeping into her bones. Crackling energy danced in the air, her limbs felt heavier with each passing moment. She knew she had to escape, that if she lingered even a moment too long, the orchard would haul her into an eternity of craving. Yet, as she turned to depart, the harpy's gaze followed her. Perhaps, Merope thought, she glimpsed a fleeting sadness in those inhuman eyes. Then she ran, forcing her legs to move against the orchard's gravitational pull. The path wound back through labyrinthine rows, each tree straining to entice her with their gleaming fruit. Yet she kept her eyes forward, fighting the orchard's illusions that threatened to erode her sense of self. When at last she emerged at the orchard's gate, she gasped in disbelief. She felt as though she had journeyed weeks instead of hours. The battered gate stood ajar, exactly as she'd left it. The sky was streaked with the rich oranges and purples of late afternoon, as if only half a day had passed in the mortal realm. Gaining fresh air into her lungs, she powered her way through the threshold, the orchard's hold waning with each step. Only when she reached the rocky cliff path did she allow herself a glance back. The orchard glowed behind those rusted iron bars, a mirage of shimmering gold. High above, silhouettes of harpies soared, their shrieks carrying on the wind. Merope felt a stabbing ache, an intuition that she had brushed against a deep power beyond mortal comprehension. She was leaving behind something that would remain a perpetual snare for humankind. Yet, at least now, she could warn them. She pressed her hand to her wounded shoulder, pain flaring once more. The blood had dried, completing a circle of dried crimson where the harpy's claw had raked her. With resolve etched into every step, she descended the hazardous cliffs. She needed to reach the fisherman's village, to share her experience. She would warn them that the orchard's golden fruit was more than a mere treasure. It was a poison laced with a damned enchantment. Perhaps her tale could serve as a deterrent to those blinded by ambition. She allowed herself to hope that one day a resourceful mind or a benevolent deity might unravel the orchard's malignant tapestry. As she picked her way down, the evening light dimmed, painting the cliffs in a haunting glow. She could almost feel the orchard's presence behind her, an eyesore of shining malice against the stark horizon. She paused on a ledge and looked out to the Ionian Sea, shimmering with the last reflections of daylight. She breathed the salty air, letting it cleanse the orchard's oppressive scent from her soul. Behind her, at the summit, nothing changed. The orchard remained in silent vigil, but Merope knew the Harpies would continue their watch. In coming days and years, more travelers, pirates, or ambitious warriors might attempt to seize the orchard's forbidden bounty. They, too, would face the orchard's illusions, and they might not possess the clarity or luck to escape with their minds intact. If she succeeded in spreading the truth, perhaps fewer would dare, and perhaps in the fullness of time the orchard's keeper Hera herself would relent. Yet gods rarely relinquished their judgments so easily, and curses from the divine rarely loosened their hold. These thoughts lingered in Merope's mind as she made the last treacherous steps toward the base of the cliff. There, the cypress grove awaited her, sheltering the remnants of her makeshift campsite. She collapsed onto the ground, breathing heavily. A sense of finality wrapped around her, a mingled gratitude and regret. She had touched upon the edge of a darkness older and deeper than mortal strife. Even if her words saved just one wanderer from succumbing, she would consider her journey worthwhile. Tomorrow, she would return to the humble fishing village to recount her story. But tonight, she would watch the moon climb over the sea's dark expanse, and she would nurse her wounded shoulder, allowing the ache to remind her of the Harpies' talons and the orchard's hungry magic. Soft darkness settled around her, and in the hush that followed, she resolved that no matter how the orchard called in the days to come, she would never again step through its rusted gate. Her memory would serve as both caution and testament to the orchard's curse. When sleep finally claimed her, she was dimly aware of far-off shrieks echoing across the wind-scoured cliffs. Even from this distance, the Harpies' vigil persisted, guarding the orchard's golden fruit from all who craved it. Whether that orchard might one day be freed from its dark enchantment remained a question for legends, yet unwritten. But so long as the orchard stood beneath that timeless sky, dripping with gold and guarded by winged sentinels, mortals would be forced to confront the price of their desires and the impossible mercy that rests in the hands of the gods.